Everybody, it is Marie here from the Quarantine Diaries. It is Easter Sunday, April 12th. Happy Easter to everybody today, and I hope you're waking up to a lovely day, beautiful and peaceful in your home. Mind you, I suspect if you have smaller children, they will be wanting to make sure that the Easter Bunny may have visited overnight. I am fortunate now that mine realise that the Easter Bunny in our house tends to come with red hair and a much more crotchety disposition. So no early risers to go out on an Easter egg hunt for us anymore. But I really do hope that you have been able to take the opportunity this morning to catch up with your families and enjoy a little bit of Easter. I am not somebody that holds Christian faith to my heart, but I do love so many of the things that surround the meaning of Easter. And of course, Easter Sunday is the day of the resurrection. And I actually think there's something really poignant in that, because I believe that whilst you may or may not hold a Christian faith, I think that the message in terms of a resurrection, particularly at these times, is more important and valuable than ever. And I think hopefully as a country, a nation and a community, we'll take a day like today to reflect and rejoice with what we have with our families, and actually look towards a resurrection of that community spirit, of our nation, of our businesses, of our homes, and of the world once we all move through this pandemic. So yeah, I hope you have a really, really lovely, lovely day. I actually literally just pulled hot cross buns out of the oven before I came out here, and I am hoping that a certain ginger mouse, a certain very tall, leggy, bottomless teenage ginger mouse, doesn't scump the whole lot before I get a chance to go in and even have one for my breakfast. So yes, that's what we've been up to in the McBusky household this morning. Good morning, everybody. No chocolate in the house for Easter, Jeanette. That's a sad, sorry state of affairs, isn't it? Yeah, only actually a modicum here, I have to say, to be fair, in this house. There isn't too much, but there's one or two. And I was running a bit late this morning because I was busy watching Breakfast Bourbon with Ethan and Deb from 9:30. And if you didn't get a chance to catch Ethan and Deb before you came to come over to see me, after you've watched this, do go back and watch it. It's a real giggle, those two, honestly. They talked about the Quarantarium hat that we talked about yesterday. Ethan's actually made good progress on his sweater, his Alaska pullover, so do go and have a look at that. And also their stash busting project, which they're moving on to first. And actually that is one of the it was from that and partially from the conversation yesterday that inspired me to talk about what I'm going to talk about today. And actually from the conversation yesterday, one of the things that Ethan is doing, so for those who don't know Ethan, it's Ethan Barclay Inu, and he is from Outlaw Yarn, a Canadian by nationality who happens to also not only work for Outlaw Yarn, but he also lives with Deborah and her family in Christchurch as well. And Ethan is, he's a fantastic knitter, and one of the things he loves garments, big garments and sweaters, and I mean, he dives into, no little trivial projects for our Ethan, let's put it this way. And he has, one of the things that he was talking about yesterday in our pajama party Saturdays is that he is now finishing, before he launches into any new projects, he wants to make sure he's finishing a work in progress that he's got, because the new Starflake blanket from Stephen West and West Knits was launched overnight. I think I popped a post in the page here about that a couple of days ago. It looks incredible, a really beautiful blanket, very striking, very Stephen West, using those sort of geometrical shapes that he had, I think, with his Starflake mystery knit along. So if you're wanting a really beautiful blanket project to get your teeth into, this certainly will be it. He's itching to cast that on, and before he gets to that, he's got some sweaters that he's got on the go that he wants to get finished off first, and the Alaska pullover is one of those. And I suddenly realized after speaking to him yesterday that I launched into the Rambler sweater, and actually I did, for me, have quite a few works in progress on the go that I hadn't actually tidied up. And one of them is a sweater that I started after the winter last year, in fact, just after Knit August Nights last year, for my youngest son. Now, before you think that the sweater is absolutely huge, my oldest boy Louis he's tall, lean string bean, and he's going to be tall and lanky. The younger one is built very much like his parents, and we're both rather solid and robust. But also, too, for those who've not met me in person, I'm quite tall. I'm sort of 5'10" and a bit tall, so I'm not only I'm large and tall, and my husband's sort of 5'11", so we're not destined to make small children. And so our youngest is looking like he's going to be a very tall glass of water, and he has grown so insanely much. And he's only just turned 12 a couple of days ago, so this kid's going to be 6 foot plus. So I've kind of had to plan ahead for this winter, because I've been caught out so many times with going to get stuff for them and thinking, oh yeah, I'll get a season out of that. But you buy it, I mean, I'm sure everyone here with boys especially, or even girls too, of that age, that kind of teenagey 20 age, you buy it at the beginning of the season, and by the end of the season, sleeves are like this, and the hems of trousers are halfway up their legs, and they just grow at such a rapid rate. So this is what I'm working on for him. So I finished that sleeve not that long ago, and he doesn't like his sleeves too long, so I've actually adjusted the length of the sleeve. I've actually put this on him to fit it. He likes his sweaters really big and bulky and sloppy, so that's quite deliberate. And so yes, I hadn't put down the sleeve, so I've started this is what I did last night. I should get the sleeve done this afternoon. Now I'll show you the pattern. The pattern is called Neck Down Hooded Pullover for Men. That's it there. It is by, does it actually say on here who it is by? It's just Knitting Pure and Simple, it says here. I did actually get this on Pattern Fish, but of course Pattern Fish is no longer around. But I will actually pop she has got a website here. I will actually pop a website up, because I am picking that you will be able to get the pattern potentially directly from her. So it is a hooded pullover. As you can see, the sleeves there are quite long. I will not be doing mine that long. However, with this, I've done it in such a way that if I have to unpick the cuffs and actually add some extra length and put some stripes or what have you in there, I will. I've also, the other thing I've discovered, I have done it to the meterages that she has laid out. However, knowing hoods as I do, they always take more than you say. I am literally down to my last 2 balls, and that's all I've got left on the sleeve so far. So I know that I'll be breaking in and going through at least another half of one of these, and 1.5 balls for a hood on a project that size is not going to be enough. So I'm decided that I'm going to modify that, and I'm not going to do a hood because I just don't want. I don't feel like yarn chicken, people. Do not feel like the chicken of the yarn. So what I'm going to do, as you can see, the neckline is that using a garter stitch. I'm actually going to pick up this edge here all the way around, and then just do in a smaller needle. She's used quite a big needle size on this. I'm going to do a smaller needle, pull that neckline in, and do a garter stitch collar about that, and that will finish it off. It will also give me enough yarn, which I will pop away in the stash. It'll probably hopefully give me a ball or so left, which I will then hold on to. So then if I need to do some lengthening in the sleeves, I can unravel those cuffs and wind those off, add some length into the sleeves, and then re-knit the cuffs back on again. And then that way, hopefully, I might get a couple of seasons out of this jumper instead of just one, the rate that child is growing. So I have decided to finish this off. For those who are new, and there's a number of you new, welcome. This yarn here, as you can see, it's a lovely tweedy yarn. It is a Aran weight yarn. It is called Lodge. Now, there's good news and bad news on Lodge. Lodge is, it's been around a couple of times. It's done a couple of times around the track. That's it there. It's a tweed using this fantastic viscose net. The good news is we're going to do something in this weight, probably keep these colours, and we're looking at, because this weight yarn and this style of yarn has been a really good doer. And people love it. They've really been enjoying it. The downside is the viscose net that we've used to create the tweed effect. We've now gone through it all, and it's something that we haven't been able to replace, and we haven't been able to get again. The people we got it from no longer exist. Haha, welcome to the bold new world we live in. So we're just sort of having a little bit of a brainstorm about how we replicate something in a yarn like this, but in this weight. So it won't be back in exactly the way it was before. I think we've got a little bit left of the batch. I know in Egmont, which is the white one, the cream undyed one, I think that's waiting once lockdown is reduced and we can go back to work. That's actually waiting to come through the mill, and I think we've got one, it might be this colour actually, to be dyed off in the last of it. But that's it. The stocks that we have is until we do something new. But we will, fear not, we are going to probably maintain the colour range that we've got, and we'd already had some new colours in the pipeline for that as well. But yeah, so it will be back, but it'll be back, Jim, but not necessarily as you know it. So yeah, so that's that. So that's what I'm working on today, which then of course means, oh, let me put this back in now so I don't lose it. And I need to pull that out of there so I don't lose that. Which then also means that I haven't done really anything more on the Rambler sweater since I was here with Ethan yesterday. And for those who haven't had a chance to catch up with yesterday, I will just show you now, I have finished my colour work. There you go. I haven't done the bobbles through the centre of the Noro here, which is what she has in the pattern. And I've done that quite deliberately because when I lay it out, the colour work sits right on my breast line, and knitted nipples I do not require. So I have decided not to do those. But to be honest with you, because of the nature of the Noro yarn, and it's why I selected it, you have this beautiful gradient amount of colour work. And to be honest with you, I think the bobbles would have distracted and detracted from that. So I've just let the yarn speak for itself, really. I did, and I did mention in one of the previous ones, I had edited this yarn a little bit. I've gone and I'll show you the two bits that I've edited out because they're sitting here. Is my bug. There they are. Ugh. So I edited two portions of yarn from the ball. But I'm held on to these, and I'm holding on to them because, as I was saying to Ethan, I have enough left to do a hat probably. But see, stuff like this, I can actually use this like in the, introduce it into the cuff or of the hat. I may even introduce these potentially, add a couple of rows when it gets down to the cuffs on this. I won't do a full repeat of the colour work. I may do half of it actually. I may even do half the colour work. But what I thought I might do instead is I might where can I find the other ball? There it is. I might just do like a couple of, just before we head to the ribbed portion of the cuff, I may just throw in a graduation of a couple of rows or a couple of rows with a couple of slip stitches or something to give us a little zigzaggy effect in there. I haven't quite decided, but that's where these actually might be quite useful. I could use them there, but that's how much of the Deering from Bandit, the Cove, Full Ply, and the Noro. Look at that Noro. It's the Noro that goes on forever that I've got left. So I'm really quite pleased with that. So that's what I'm going to be working on once I have finished my sleeve on my hoodie. And I've done about an inch or so of the body. What I am going to do is I'm going to leave that there, and I'm going to pick, unfortunately, I think I have another set of needles in that size. I'm actually going to pick these sleeves up, and I'm going to start knitting these sleeves. And I'm going to do that because I want to get the sleeves knocked off and out of the way. And as Ethan said yesterday, I mean, this is quite a large garment. So, and I'm definitely finding this because I didn't do that for the hoodie. The weight of that garment, knitting the sleeves, and I've got small circular, so I'm just going around and around and around, but just lifting it, the weight and rotating that project around it's a real effort and quite a fart. So I think by doing the sleeves in this, while it's still quite light and not a lot of weight on there, will allow me to actually get all those done. And then the bit, honestly, it is the bit of the sweater that we hate doing the most, is it not? So we get that knocked off and out of the way. But it also means too that once I've gone and done that, it means that once I start going to fit the body and I put some A-line shaping in there as well, it means that I can actually fit it with the sleeves. I can get my sleeve length just right, have it fitted, and then I can have a look at where I want to introduce that A-line shaping. Do I want to keep it relatively firm around the breast? When do I want to have it flare out afterwards? I don't do breast darts. I'm sort of at that. I probably could, but because I have sort of a case of breasts and then mother tummy 1 and mother tummy 2, I actually quite like things falling away from the breast. So for me, accentuating that isn't such a priority. If for you though, if someone else wants something a little bit more fitted, you may wish to put a breast dart in there, and then that will actually give you a little bit more shape before you head down. So that's where I'm at with Rambler. So that is, that's ticking along quite well, really. Let's see what everyone's up to first before I launch into my topic of the day. Oh, so many Easter wishes. So it is. Happy Easter, everybody. It's really, really lovely. Oh, wow. Mary was just saying she had a massive Zoom session with all her grandchildren. She misses them so much. Actually, I had a Zoom session yesterday, Mary, with the wonderful Paul and Julie Monk from Harney's Hoolies. If you guys know Paul and Julie, they're just fabulous. I've done a number of shows with them over the years, and in fact quite often we're booth buddies. We're often situated either across from each other or next to each other, so we've had loads of weekends spent sort of with lots of fun and joking and ribbing and ribbing of the joking kind as opposed to the knitting kind, and a bit of both. So Julie hosted a fabulous Zoom yesterday and a number of people joined. I was only there for the first half hour, but it was a whole heap of fun, and it's nice. And I actually had another Skype call with another friend earlier in the day as well, and it's been actually really nice. I've just sort of really moved into that and got onto that in the last little bit, and it's been good. So it's been really, really good. Oh, yes, if you have been watching Breakfast Bourbons this morning, why is that not? Why are we not? Come on, you want to scroll down. Oh, let's do it this way, shall we? Oh, why are we not scrolling down? There we go. Just making sure I'm not missing anything before we launch in. Oh, awesome. See, Helen, you're a gem, Helen. Helen has just gone and popped the pullover pattern. Diane Salsey is who designed that. She's just gone and popped the pattern on the comments there for us. So thank you so much for doing that. Right, good as gold. Here we go. Jeanette saying another reason why I like Magic Loop, not changing the whole garment around when knitting the sleeves. Yeah. I suppose, actually, isn't it, Jeanette? I don't mind Magic Loop, and I will do it. And I use Magic Loop a lot for hats. But I have to admit, I'm a bit lazy. I bounce between, actually. I bounce between. I've got a set of Addy Turbos. And I also, it's like I'm knitting the Rambo and Knit Picks at the minute, but I'll be the first to admit, guys, I'm a needle whore. Okay, so I do not have a particular bias towards one set of needles. I'm an equal opportunity pointy stick lover, and I have. In fact, one session, I might actually go and pull all the needles and do a bit of a needle review and about the pros and cons of all the different needles. I literally own hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of sets of knitting needles. I'm one of these people that goes to charity shops and op shops and hunts out certain favourites and buys up old straights and circulars. And before you ask why on earth I do that a couple of reasons. One, if I've got multiple works in progress at a go, it allows me to actually have a depth of needles there to use them. B, I actually find large sets of circular needles like that are more effective as stitch holders than actually those big long safety pinny things. So I just prefer to hold live stitches on something like that than on a holder. Do I have them catalogued and organised and all the rest of it? Other than my interchangeable set from Addie, which has its own little case, no, I don't. They literally are in a cloth bag. In fact, I've got one just sitting right over here. I've got a jar of straights and a whiskey tumbler tube thing, which I keep here in the office in case I need to do the odd little thing. I've got another one actually like that at work. I have another one here at home next to my knitting chair. I have a bag full of old circulars. I mean, some of these circulars are from the 50s. I do actually have my knit picks. I do have some knit picks and interchangeables, which are actually in a little sew-in pouch to keep those tips actually together so they don't get lost, and cables separately. So I do actually have those organised also. And I do have sets of double DPNs, and yeah, it's quite it's quite obsessional actually. And I buy a lot of stuff from the op shops, and I have an absolute thing for Bakelite needles, but that's another conversation for another day. But I do also buy up a lot of straights, particularly when I see them, if they're good, the bamboo are in good quality, or pony metals or things, because you can often at op shops pick those needles up for 20 cents, 50 cents a pair, if that. And if they're in relatively good condition and the tips are all okay and they look good, I will tend to buy up anywhere from 3.25 millimeter up to 4.5 millimeter, or even 5 millimeter, whenever I see them, and I hold them because I teach a lot of people to knit, or I do classes with Can, or we have knit and learn sessions at Skeins, and all of those needles I have there for people to use if they haven't purchased anything or they don't have anything to bring with them. And it just means that once I've got them, I can gift them, they can take them away. They can put their knitting or onto those needles and not have to worry about having to take them off or try and do anything. Once they've got them, and they can take them away, and I'm not going to sweat about 20 cents that I've spent purchasing those needles for them. So yeah, well, that's a justification I give myself, but that's generally what I do with it. Okay, I don't quite know where I went to with that, but anywho, right. Sue's one. Oh, there we go. Oh, yeah, Helen's saying she's got a bigger... Yeah, thanks, Helen. I'm so glad I'm not alone. Right. Okay, I'm going to talk about today, and Ethan inspired me with this yesterday, was around... they're doing a project with scraps and stuff, and it actually got me thinking about because I've been diving into... I've got a couple of cupboards here at home, which has been my main stash cupboards for many, many, many years. And so I've been literally diving into those every couple of days for inspiration for you guys here for the diaries. And one of them, and after Ethan's chat yesterday, I suddenly thought, I've got that bag in there, and I just throw all that stuff in there, and I don't think about it. And what I'm talking about is swatching. So I don't know how many of you out there swatch, but whenever you work in yarn retail like I do, that you have someone come to you and they're concerned about a pattern, they're wanting to get sizing right, or they've been working on a pattern and the meterages have been off, and all of these sorts of things. And so often in advice columns, the number one thing you hear people say to them, oh, well, have you swatched that? And for years, I didn't swatch anything. And I don't always swatch, if I'm brutally honest. Depending on what the project is, I don't necessarily swatch for it. If I'm going to make something like this, for example, I wouldn't swatch for something like this. I would make sure that I've roughly got enough meterage to see me through, and if I don't, well, then I just finish it off and make it up as I go along. But I would never bother swatching for a simple, it's all over the show, a simple scarf or shawl. But if I'm going to do a garment, particularly if it's something for me, which I'm wanting to get sizing right, or my husband, or even now the boys at the size that they are, or if it's a yarn that I've not worked with before, I quite often will do that. And in fact, I do this every day, every new yarn that comes through the mill. There's usually, it used to be, I used to swatch every single one of them back in the day. Don't quite have the time to do that, but if I don't swatch them, I actually mix them around the team and get them to swatch these yarns now. So then I can see the effect of other knitters and what they're doing when they swatch. But every single yarn that we launched gets swatched. So we will literally just knit a basic swatch to what the standard gauge is on the ball band, to see how it performs, what the count is, so we know what theoretically the gauge should be based on convention, and then we test that convention with a swatch, because sometimes you actually do it and you're like, yeah, that's not what we were expecting. So that's just a practice that I have done as part of my professional life for years, and I then bring that at home. Now, being a little bit of the fibre hoarder, as many of you now may have realised that I am, I don't throw any of these things away. So I had a bag, or I have a bag. In fact, it's just been made bigger because the one that it was in is too small, which I would often just throw all of these bits and pieces into, and I would biff them in there, and I would, I'm just pulling even more things out because I can show them to you, and I would often, in here as well, I've got Weird and Wonderful Yarns. It's a Lurex. What else have I got in there? I've got a really old crepe in there. I think that's in there because I was using it to learn to knit for somebody. So it's a crazy old grab bag of stuff. So for years and years, so then I have these swatches. This is a really classic case in point of one of those work swatches I was telling you about. This was a yarn that was launched by another company. I know what it is, but it was probably launched about 10 years ago, maybe. So, you know, I have a whole heap of these. I have things like, if I'm playing around with a new stitch, that's a little crochet corkscrew. In fact, there's another little crochet stitch I've been playing around with. I was wanting to test out some I-cord. That was a lace pattern that someone had asked me to see if I could replicate and had done. You guys will recognize some of that. Is the original, that's Forever Green, which was the precursor to Heritage Organic Merino. That was a stitch pattern that I was testing out. I've got, honestly, these are the ones that I've just pulled at the top of the thing. Dozens and dozens and dozens of them. I don't throw them away. As you can see, I hold on to them. Why, you ask, Marie? Well, sometimes I do refer back to them. But at one point there, I got all very inspired by Prudence Mapstone. Now, for those that don't know Prudence Mapstone, she is sort of the free-form knitting guru of Australasia, and they are around putting together all these crazy textures to create a fabric using free-form knitting and crochet, and she's really huge in it. So I suddenly thought, well, I have all of these crazy-ass swatches, maybe I should try and do that myself. So then I found this. And that was in the bag, and there's a whole heap of things. Like there's some things there there's some synthetic yarns that I played around with. We've got some early homespuns. There you go. There's a cabled panel there. When I was wanting to test out, obviously I was going to do something in some cabling. You've got, and actually this is something that I will show you. So one of the things, if I'm going to knit a project and it's got some stitching in there that I've never done before. Now, bearing in mind, some of these swatches in here are nigh on 20 plus years old. Okay, so yes, I have been hoarding for that long. And I was a very, very rudimentary knitter probably for the first 15 years. I literally would only knit things like, in fact, the number one thing that I knit the most, and some of these, my father still wears one of these to this very day, is I went through a phase of knitting, and if you're a Kiwi, you'll know what I'm talking about. Naturally, I think it was Naturally, back in the day, I think it was, and I also think it was a Gita Shraba pattern, but it was a classic, what I call Kiwi homespun style jumper, drop-shouldered, boxy jumper. And if you remember it, it was either in a V-neck or a crew neck, ribbed. Literally, it was two rectangles with the slightest amount of shaping for the neck, you know, drop-shouldered, basic trapezoid sleeves, and that was it. And the pattern was very, 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 very basic. Most of them were written for DK, 10 ply, 12 ply, or even 14 ply, because those are the 4 main plies that you would get. They would also write them in those plies and have that pattern out there, because if you were a spinner, it then allowed you to actually pick what would fit your homespun the best. Bearing in mind that I grew up on a sheep and cattle station, so that's what I grew up with. That's what I remember. That's what I know. Everybody that was knitting, that's pretty much what they knit. It was sized literally from toddlers through to adults, and it was your go-to jumper. And then if you wanted to play around with it, you could do your own stripes or color work, or you could put cables up the front, or you could embellish it. But it was kind of like the basic classic sweater template. And that's essentially all I knit for years and years. Every now and then I would sort of colour out the lines and find something a little bit different. And in fact, I've got one of like a broken rib that I did for my husband, which was, I purchased it around the same time. And in fact, that's a cracking pattern. I should do that again. It's a real goodie. But that's all I did. So I never challenged myself. I never challenged myself with different techniques. I mean, top knitting. What is this top knitting? You speak of circular needles. What is this? What is this alchemy that is out there? And then I was a classic. If it couldn't be done on 6, 8s, 10s, or 12s, I really didn't want to know about it. So that was me for years. I was quite happy. I was very happy in that bubble. Very happy in that bubble. And then when I had a break, went back to knitting, and then what brought me back to knitting is I had moved just to the Hawke's Bay, and I had a 6-week period before I started from the job that I'd finished to the new job that I was about to start. So I had sort of 6 weeks. I'd been made redundant in one, and I was about to start another. So I had 6 weeks downtime. I actually had received redundancy, so I didn't necessarily need to work. Phil and I were setting up our first home, so I was sort of busy with that, but I was also a bit bored. And I had friends were having babies, so I thought, I'll knit something for my friends having babies. And I hadn't done any baby knitting. So then I bought pattern books, and those pattern books were knit for straights and similar sort of concepts, and that's how I sort of got back into it. So long-winded way of saying that every now and then one of these pattern books would have something with a new technique. I thought, I quite like that, I want to give that a go. But before I'd buy and pay for the yarn and then launch into it, and then in case I cooked it up or got it wrong, I would take scraps and practice. And this is a really, really good example of that. So one, obviously, that I wanted to knit had chevrons in it, and I'd never knitted chevrons before. I'd never done increasing or decreasing on purpose outside of maybe doing some basic shaping on a neckline or on the edge of a sleeve. So I would test that out. Then I would buy knitting magazines, and they would have, often in knitting magazines, particularly the British ones, they would have like a whole page on different blocks and swatches. And there you go. Their one obviously had sort of a wavy seafoam stitch, so I'd give that a go and see. So, okay, I like the look of that. That's nice. This one here I'm very fond of. If it is the one that I think it is, it is. I'd never seen feather and fan stitch. I'm going to spin this round. And this was the very first time I'd knitted feather and fan. And I'd knitted this. Oh, I'll do it so. This is quite heavy. You see that? That feather and fan. Now that is bit of acrylic. Now that stitch patterning, that form of feather and fan, then started an absolute love affair with me, because I have designed, as you've seen, a number of things are based around that particular stitch pattern. And you know what's funny about that one there is I got it wrong. I did actually have another garter ridge in there, and I'd forgotten to put it in, and I just like this one so much. And it was the first time that I've now seen this particular version published in books as well, but I liked the smoother version, and this sent me on a path that I never knew that I was going to go. So yeah, so this is what I've gone and done. Look, I had a wrap on the other day. You may have noticed that. There's a little flower I made with the wrap. So I've got all these little scrappy bits and pieces. So if you're looking at doing the tea cozy or something like that with what Ethan and Deb are doing over at the Outlaw Lair, but you could be running short of yarn, or you may not have what you need to have you got any of your old swatches? I mean, are you like me and keep these things? Because if you do, this actually could be, you could sort of go a bit Prudence Mapstoney on it and start taking these shapes. Look at that. I was obviously, I mean, I'd learned how to crochet first and then completely forgot. And then I found I actually bought I think it was the Patents Learn to Crochet book, and I started again. So there you go. That's me playing around with something there. But see, imagine that for a tea cozy is a perfect. See, there you go. You've got the perfect foundations, and then you can start playing around and actually maybe using all some swatches, and you could kind of do a bit of a Franken cozy. I don't know. That would be that. Honestly, I just suddenly thought that would be sort of a bit fun. And the beautiful thing about that too is that particularly if you've got knitted stuff, you could actually pull things together. And sometimes you then need to, how do you join it all up? And that's one of the things that I remember learning from this class. That's where crochet can be actually quite a powerful tool and ally. Crochet is very, very good. It's a bit like mortar and brickwork. It's very good at filling in the gaps because you're not having to rely on having a series of needles, stitches on a needle. You're working, in most cases, with a single stitch at a time, right? So it means that you can, and I think I've done that on this one here. You can see where I've actually crochet joined some swatches together, but have I got some in here with yes, here we go. You can sort of see this one here is a good example of it, where I've gone and taken that little piece there, and I've actually gone and it was like a sort of, where it is there, the trapezoid shape, and I've actually probably crocheted that in to join those other pieces together and pull them together as a block. So you can actually use it to paint fill the gaps. I've actually put some, I can see where I've gone and put crocheted edgings on other knitted swatches to give them a little bit more rigidity to go and add to other things. So there's absolutely no reason why you can't do that. Oh, look at that. And I've even got, look, with a triangle in the middle. I know, the things you find. So that, you know, if you've got anything like that lurking around, that could be a bit of fun to do, couldn't it? Just sit there and have a bit of a play and get those out of your out of any sort of scraps bags, or if you've got those swatches, and actually do something with them. Either that, or you can look at me and go, yeah, Marie, you need help, because you know, I know, but you've, in my defense, I have been doing this for a very long time. So there you go. It's almost like you're peering into the crazy stitched world that I live in. So that is pretty much what I've got to talk about today. I have had confirmation from Tom Dennis from Tanduan Court Station in Victoria, Australia. He is coming to join us tomorrow on the Quarantine Diaries Easter Monday, and we're going to talk about the foundation of the Polworth breed of sheep, which was actually founded on Tanduan Court Station and by his family, and they still to this very day farm that station. I've been there. It is amazing. So we're going to talk about that tomorrow. I'm also just figuring out exactly what day we're going to catch up with Sophia Morse Kennedy, and we're going to talk about some crochet, and hopefully I'm going to get Sophia back more than once, talking about possibly some of the concepts we've got here, or if you haven't picked up a hook for a very, very long time, now could be the time where you can pick up a hook, and actually how even the most basic simple crochet stitch can be used to create something pretty incredible. So I hope to do that later in the week, and I've got a few other emails out there as well, hopefully going to catch up with people, so you don't have to look at this mug all the time. I'll just catch up and see if we've got any more questions from everybody this morning. Oh, yes, Trisha saying feather and fan is a is one of her favourites too. So yeah, no, I love it. Very, very fond. Right, well, that's me. I need to go in and make sure that I've still got hot cross buns to go and eat, because I haven't had me brekkie. That's what I'm after today. I hope you have a really, really lovely day today. Enjoy your families. If you're with them, if you're or if you're in a shared bubble, maybe today is the day that you want to get together and be able to spend some time. And if you're on your own, get that technology locked up and have a Zoom with somebody that is near and dear. So enjoy your day. I'll be back tomorrow, same time, same place with Tom. And until then, happy Easter, everybody. Bye.